Hello programmers, welcome to another Introduction to Java tutorial. Today we're going to be talking about input, which is a very powerful tool in Java. If you ever need to ask your user a question or have them type some response to a prompt, you're going to need to be able to read input. So without further ado, let's learn how to read and program input in Java. So first go ahead and open up your IDE. I'm using Eclipse, and I've already created a class for us to use, which I called input from user, and I've also created a main method. The simple way of obtaining input, which I will be showing you today, requires us to use an import statement. So what is an import statement? Well, basically there are a lot of very smart programmers out there, and they design some pretty great classes that we can use in our programs. But in order for us to use their classes, we have to import those classes first so our Java programs know where to find their classes. So in order to import what we are going to be using today, you're going to need to type in import, which is the keyword here, and then java.util.scanner, just like that. And now we have successfully imported a class called Scanner that a very smart programmer wrote for us that we can now use in our program. So if we want to create a scanner, if you remember from our objects tutorial, we're going to need to create a scanner object. So how would we do that? Scanner. Let's just call it input equals new scanner. And the parameter that we're going to be using for this scanner class, since you guys probably don't know much about scanner class, we're going to be using system.in. This is just a syntax to remember, but you should recognize this structure right here. Class name that you come up with, new to trigger the constructor event, class name again, and then some form of parameter, because this is exactly what we did a couple tutorials ago when we were learning how to use objects. So basically we've started this new scanner object. Now let's go ahead and pose the user a question. Who is the user? Well, you are the user, or anybody that uses your program is the user. So let's write our question. Let's say something like system.out.print, and then we're going to make our question, how old is the planet? Coincidentally, I don't actually know the answer to this question, but we're going to pretend I do, and let's just proceed. So we have a question, which more formally is known as a prompt. So we prompt the user to answer something, right? So we have this print statement right here. We ask them a question, and then I put a semicolon here and a space just for formatting. You'll see why in a second once we actually receive input. This just makes it look a bit prettier. And so next what we need to do is we need to actually obtain the input. And so in order to obtain the input, what you're going to have to do is you need to write create a new variable. So if we want to obtain an input that is of type integer, we're going to need to create an integer variable. If we want an input that is of type string, we'll need to create a string variable. But the answer to the question, how old is the planet, is obviously going to be a number. So we're going to create a variable with an integer of the integer type. So int, and then my input, because why not? And now, here comes the key part. In order to obtain the input, we type the name of our object, and we're going to use a method, and the method that we'll be using is nextInt. So if we were using or trying to obtain a type of input that was of type double, we would be using input.nextDouble. If we were trying to get an input of type string, we would use .next. But we'll get to that later. So let's not forget our semicolon. And now if we run this program, what we should see is our prompt shows up, and then we can type in a number, just like that, and hit enter. And now our program has successfully stored our input into the variable myInput. but it doesn't do anything with that. So if we wanted to actually see what the value of my input is, we could we could print it out using the following code. So we can just remove this, and we can type my input. When I type in my integer and then hit enter, it'll just print. It'll print this on the next page. So actually, yeah, it's looking good. So we're all set here. What if we want to format our print so that we are receiving a string? Well, here's how we do that. So in order to receive a string input, we're going to need to rephrase our question. What's a question where you'd receive a sentence as an answer? How about, what is your favorite color? And then we can change this to a string type, an input dot next, and we can leave this the same. There we go. Yellow. Ta-da! We have successfully received an input, and we have printed out that input. With this tutorial, I hope that you learned how to record and prompt for inputs. Thank you for watching.